I will officially call to order the Salt Lake City Human Rights Commission meeting. The date is Tuesday, July 2nd. It is currently 5:35 p.m. We're just going to go through roll call, starting with the people who are in here in person. So we'll start with Commissioner Mirabel.
I'm here.
Okay, amazing. Commissioner Harmon. And Commissioner Sullivan.
Here.
All right, Commissioner Terry here, and then we'll move to online. Commissioner Lita.
Here, virtually. One word for me. That particular room has a very bad echo, and the microphones are scattered around the table. It's difficult to hear what people are saying if talking into one of the microphones or if multiple people are talking at the same time. It's just difficult. The sound echoes around and you really can't make out what anybody is saying. So for my benefit and for anybody else in the future who is on a virtual call in that particular room, it's helpful if only one person at a time speak and they speak into one of the microphones.
I could also just project. Can you hear me, David?
Yes. Okay, David, we're going to move the microphones closer so that you can hear to us.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks.
We will project as well.
I'll use my teacher.
Okay, and then Commissioner Satine is absent, and then Commissioner Rodriguez is also absent, as well as Commissioner Bacon is also absent. And that concludes the roll call. Oh, okay. And then also in attendance is Michelle Moon, the city's impact manager, Maria Romero, the city's executive assistant, and then later on we will have, and also Kenyon Koi, chief impact officer of the city. And then we also have a special guest joining us later, Mayor Mendenhall. Going into the adoption and approval of last meeting's minutes, would anybody like to motion to approve?
I move the approval of the
Okay.
I move the approval of the minutes
Okay, great. I'll second.
of the last meeting.
Everyone in favor of adopting last meeting's minutes, say aye.
Aye.
Great. Anyone opposed? Anyone else?
I don't think I read them, so I'm gonna abstain.
Okay, Pamela's abstaining. Everybody in. Okay, also like to note for the record that Commissioner Cicilline has joined. Hi, Commissioner Cicilline. All right, looking like there's no member from the public present, here or online, I will skip to agenda item 4. Should we just wait for the mayor to propose everything? Okay. Okay, so updates on assigned priority areas. I'll start, David, we can start with you.
Okay, as we're talking about priority areas, please keep in mind if Mayor does walk in, then we can
switch it.
be attentive with that.
David, since you're our only member online, would you like to start with just an update of?
Sure, I'd be happy to start. So my priority area is the unsheltered neighbors that we have in the city. And the most important development is the Supreme Court's decision in Grants Pass, which was announced last week, that in essence held that it was not a constitutional violation of the Cruel and Unusual Punishments Clause for a municipality to enforce its anti-camping regulations, which means that the a city like Salt Lake City that has anti-camping regulations in place can now enforce them regardless of whether there are shelters available for the unsheltered defined housing. So it's not unconstitutional. That was an open question created initially by the Ninth Circuit in the Martin versus Boise case. It's now a closed question. I think it only answers part of the problem. The city can certainly enforce its anti-camping rules to prevent unsheltered people from camping and sleeping overnight in public parks and other spaces, but it doesn't answer the question of what then? Where do these people go? Do they simply roam around the city walking all night long? And then what happens when they fall dead tired on their feet? If there are no places, no sheltered spaces for these people to seek shelter, the only other alternative, which isn't really an alternative, is to enforce the anti-camping rules and put people in jail. And that's not a satisfactory solution. Jails are not a suitable place for the unsheltered, particularly children who may be unsheltered. And the jails are already overcrowded and understaffed. So I think the challenge for Salt Lake City is to figure out how to enforce its rules in a humane way that finds some alternative forms of shelter, which has always been the problem. So I don't really think that this decision answers the question. It just simply makes it more urgent that the city find solutions to the unsheltered problem it faces. That's my conclusion from the case. That's my report.
Does anybody have any questions for Commissioner?
I'm wondering, yes, David, I will speak this way. My question is, what are I know that the city is doing a lot of things to mitigate, right? And, have you met with Andrew Johnson or anyone and gotten feedback on the city's response to that?
You know, I don't. It was a little hard for me to hear you, Jen. So I'm assuming you're asking what the city's response to the decision is.
Yes,
I don't know yet. The case is so new. I don't honestly think the city has has had a chance to digest it and figure out how they're going to change their policies. That will be something I will continue to investigate because I suspect that there will be a lot of pressure put on the city, particularly by certain groups within our community that want the city to enforce its anti-camping regulations and remove the unsheltered from public spaces. There's going to be a lot of pressure, I think, on the city to do something about this. But I don't know what the city's going to do because there are no places for these people to go. The shelters are full. The tiny home village, which was supposed to be up and running this fall, is behind schedule. It's not likely that it'll be completed until sometime maybe in 2025. And other alternatives are certainly being explored by the city, but I don't know what the city is going to be able to do anything in any way that's different than what it's already been trying to do, which is to find more shelter.
okay, thank you.
Yeah, you must use
David just said his phone. I'm a little bit.
Yes. This is really sensitive.
Is it better or worse with that mic?
They can't hear you. All right, so I hope you all can hear me. So I'm going to be doing a report, we're gonna be doing a look into belonging in the city of Salt Lake City. So belonging, I haven't really had a sense of belonging in the city due to having many benefits, and that's including increased pride in being part of that social circle. It leads to economic benefits, even an environmental awareness of the city's climate. So cities, there's many ways that we can create a sense of belonging, but I wanted to connect with the city itself already to see what efforts we've been doing. And I connected with Demi Choi, he is the Chief Equity Officer, and I figured it would be really good to start and see what the city's already doing. So we're going to be partnering up as we move forward through the year, and we're going to see what we can do, whether we do this internally, which is within SLC Corp, and then we're going to extend outward towards the city. That's my report.
Any follow-up for Commissioner Armenia? Pamela, do you want to share some updates about what's been going on in your community?
Well, do you want me to give my update now, Michelle, because I think it's later in the agenda, so we can just talk about it now?
Yeah, later is just like a reminder.
Oh, okay. So back on June 19th, I met with, a few people, from the state and from the county to talk about the planning of the immigration forum. There was Natalie Eldery, who is, works for the governor's office, is the director of immigration policy, I'm not exactly sure what the title is. Damien was there, Joseph Jenda, who works for the county, was there. And so talked about the plans for the immigration forum and how we can partner together. So we have selected Saturday, September 21st as the date, because that's during welcoming week, and we obviously want to do it in conjunction with welcoming week. Michelle and I talked about the idea, I know we did the last one like it in the afternoon, but we're thinking to do it, maybe registration starts at 10 and the forum starts at 11 in the morning. Are people comfortable with that time frame?
And this would be on what?
Hmm?
Which day?
Saturday, yeah, we'll do it on Saturday, because most people would be, more people would be able to come, I think. And I think Damien, we're doing it at the Sorensen Center, is that what the decision is? Yeah. Okay, so we're gonna do it at the Sorensen Center. And what we talked about, a couple things that we talked about, one is sort of the framing of the topic. Obviously, there's so many different ways to frame immigration, especially right now, with the election, it's such a, big topic. One of the things Natalie had mentioned, and she could have sent it to me, but I haven't gotten it yet, but once I do, I can share it out with the group, is that she recently went to a conference and they had a presentation on the history of immigration in the United States. And, how it impacts, for example, the contribution of immigrants, the economic impact, how economists sort of love immigration, and the American people don't seem to love immigration, and to try to frame sort of that immigration isn't like just obviously a new topic, right? This has been something that's been at various moments in American history. There's been different reactions to immigrants from different types of groups, and the other thing is that talking about some of the terms that we use for people who are undocumented, or come to the United States in a variety of ways, arrive in the United States in a variety of ways, and also kind of how do we create a sense of welcome? You're talking about belonging and also welcome in the community. Along with welcoming week, and how do we prevent the idea of welcome from being weaponized? As so many terms become weaponized. So one idea we did have is having a brief presentation at the beginning to sort of launch the dialogue, and then using a similar model to what we used for the homeless forum with the questions and the table facilitators. She was also reaching out to an organization called Braver Angels, which brings together people of diverse perspectives for dialogue. And I talked about how really important it is and the model that we use that is very successful at the homeless forum, that people are not there to, you know, grandstand and convince you of their opinion and prove that they're right or argue with you. That's really important, especially if we have, you know, legislators or anybody coming, they're not there to, you know, push their opinions out. Especially if it's still be close to election time. So that's kind of where we are. I think one of the biggest pieces in terms of this group is, I think there's sort of two pieces that I want the input of the commission on. One is framing the questions. What are the questions that we actually want to ask during the dialogues, during that session where people are at tables speaking to one another? You know, we have really intentional questions that we used in the homeless forum, and I think we want to have obviously very intentional questions. But again, the people share like their own lived experience and not sort of just, you know, quoting stats or, you know, reciting some article that they read. And then secondly, I think it's really important that we have the diversity not only of like political opinions, but also of, you know, life experience of people who themselves came to the United States as immigrants or refugees or other types of migrants, reaching out to different groups that can help bring those folks in. And if we need to have interpretation, we need to look at that, or ways to make it accessible to a variety of groups. Because I think that's, you know, please don't take this as a criticism. The thing I got away from the homeless forum was that we were a lot of times speaking to people who were all on the same side. And I think our goal for these dialogues is try to get a diversity of opinions, and oftentimes even people who came to the United States as immigrants themselves sometimes can be kind of like, well, I came the right way, these people are coming the wrong way. So I think being able to hear all of those perspectives and understand them is really important. So looking for suggestions in terms of outreach, and then also suggestions in terms of the kinds of questions we would want to pose at the tables. And just waiting to hear back from Natalie. I know she was off a little bit to get some of the follow-up materials that I can then share out. That's my report. And I don't know, Damien, you were there, if you have anything to add, or Michelle and I have talked, so yeah.
Any follow-up questions for Pamela, or more waiting on any further questions?
Are we gonna have discussion, like, do you want us to answer your questions now, or is that, are we gonna have time for that?
Does that, anybody have ideas?
If you have ideas, or you can,
I think we just
send them to me by email.
Okay.
Would be great. And then I'll just keep track of all of those. But yeah, again, questions that you want to ask and outreach opportunities. Yeah, okay, thank you.
And we are going to take a pause for schedule and welcome Mayor Mendenhall. Welcome.
Hi, thanks. I'm so sorry I'm late.
You heard of it.
Are you late? I don't know. Thanks. Okay. My name is Renee.
Yeah, you can.
The room has holes.
It's long. It's loud. Can you hear me online? Hi, David.
Yes, I can hear you. Hi.
Hi.
So Mayor, we were just going around the table, and each of us has a certain assigned area of priority, and we were reporting to each other and for the record what we've investigated having to do with our respective areas of interest. And Pamela was just talking about a forum on immigration that the commission is planning for September 21. And she gave a brief presentation about the planning. And one of her questions to us was whether we had any ideas for how we could enhance that program. So my question, just as you were walking in the room, Mayor, my question for Pamela was this: are you planning to try to bring a diverse group of both service providers, residents of the community, and people who are experiencing immigration issues? Those could be DACA citizens, or DACA individuals. They could be people that are seeking asylum, people that have been in an immigration status for a while and are maybe new citizens. I mean, what is your intention in organizing the participants at this forum.
Yeah, thanks, David. I think that's really key to it, is to have a diverse representation. So I have a few organizations that I've listed out, and also individuals that I know who themselves came to the United States primarily as refugees, because that's the work that I do, so that's the connection that I have. But reaching out to groups like IRC, CCS, Holy Cross Ministries, obviously with Jenny's organization, and then some individuals. And then I think, looking to you all for the linkages that you have in the community of different groups. Again, we do want service providers and people experience who are, came to the United States as immigrants or have that family history. But again, we also want people who maybe don't view immigration positively, right? We don't want to, again, be all of us just sort of on the same page and pat ourselves on the back and say, aren't we great, because we all think we're all smarter than immigration. I think we really want to hear why there are people who maybe don't agree that immigration is a good thing, and try to understand those perspectives. So I think that's where I'm more challenged, because I don't have a lot of connections with people, the field that I work in. But I think that's also why the Braver Angels is a good resource, because they bring together people from across perspectives. So that was what Natalie and Dee and Zhao from the Center for Community and Economic Impact and Belonging, or I can't remember the name of that opportunity. Thank you. Close. And so they have that connection, and it sounds like a few other people have worked with them. So that's one piece. But if others have other connections, the way we can bring in, again, people with diverse perspectives, in terms of life experience, but also political perspectives, I think would be very important for this to be successful.
Great, and then just in the interest of time, we're gonna go over to just agenda item 4 and open the floor up to the mayor, and we're gonna give any updates on her acquisition we're gonna bring to us.
I'll lean in here. It's all right, it's like lean in closer. Again, I'm sorry that I'm late today. We finally reached an agreement with SEG for our participation agreement for the renovation of the Delta Center and the creation of the district downtown. And we presented to the city council, and that went long, so I apologize that I'm coming in late, and I'll hop back to the council meeting after this. That's an area we can talk about, just put that out there and let you know that we define the public benefits explicitly about that, just as in Buffalo through today. But the partnership agreement as a document itself, it will be transmitted to the council, not to be made public by Friday. It happens before that. So there's some details that they can't totally get because we're still drafting them. But in a nutshell, there are a large number of public benefits, including a ticket fee that will go onto every ticket for every event in the Delta Center out of sporting events. Free or discounted tickets for communities will be exempt from the ticket fee, but basically under $25 is a $1 fee, between $25 and $200 tickets is a $2 fee, over $200 is a $3 fee, and that will, all of those funds for 30 years will come to Salt Lake City for public benefit investment, like affordable housing, including family-sized housing. We have said explicitly at least $5 million of that will go to Japantown. And we've done a process that I think you're really aware of around the streetscape design there. So that's $5 million there. There's also a lot of apprenticeships, internships, and shadowing. So 15 collegiate paid apprenticeships per year with the NHL or NBA teams across their organizations, 10 high schoolers per year, and they will be focusing on, or they'll be prioritizing households that, or rather schools, districts that, or schools that we define annually for them to focus on and do outreach with. But basically families who qualify for free and reduced lunch, or there's a college equivalent of that lower income definition that is in the write-up. Also free tickets for Salt Lake community members with both of the games. And there are a whole bunch of others around transparency, how to operate $5 million for public art, and including iconic art, and we will work with them, with our arts council on the process, and kind of do outreach to local artists so that they can be competitive in that process. So anyway, there's some things there. I wanted to bring up the election year that we're in right now, and the ambiguity about the election in and of itself, but really the desire for our residents to have security around access to voting and knowing their rights around that. And I wonder if that's something that you're looking and talking about, or if there's ways that my office could support ideas that you have if you have some over the next several months. That's an area that I'm really concerned about and interested in. And I'm grateful that you're doing this work around immigration and how as a city we can be more supportive of those parts, those new community members and existing community members. You don't have to tell me right now, but I'm curious what your desired outcomes are from that workshop. And I feel like if you simply advertise it on social, you will get people who have different opinions who really want to come to conversations with you, especially if my office puts it on social, you'll reach all sorts of people. Yeah, for better or for worse.
Yeah, I think that's a great question about the goals, and I think that's something maybe we want to discuss a little bit more as a commission. I mean, I think one of the biggest goals, again, like when we decided to do these kind of public forums, and we talk about sort of human rights and the purpose of this commission, it's just that we didn't live in a world where people don't actually talk to each other who have different opinions anymore. And don't have civil dialogue, and so, you know, the format that we used in the homeless forum was this very structured, called living room conversations, and there's a really strict ground rules around the way to engage with people. And so I think, you know, a big goal is just for people to listen to somebody who maybe on social media they wouldn't listen to and just shout out, equivalent of shouting on social media. And so that people maybe would walk away and say, wow, I never heard that perspective before. Maybe they don't know somebody who came as an immigrant or a refugee, and so they finally pick up somebody's story, or somebody, you know, who is supportive of immigration and never heard somebody's story why they oppose it. And so again, it's not to convince people, it's to listen and then maybe start to have a slightly different perspective. That's a big goal. I think we could probably also identify some additional goals, I think, based on the outcome of what we hear in terms of collecting people's feedback and that kind of thing as well.
And better interest models and living room conversations. That's wonderful. Thank you. That's in September. The 21st. And then you have December 12th. I'll look at it.
Are you going to be joining us for
It's on my calendar.
For a second. You mentioned some ideas around kind of voting and getting that more accessible to other people. What would we be connected with from the city to kind of have that conversation?
The city, so there are a couple of facets. Cindy Nutrition is our city reporter, and she's the technical side of voting. Since we don't have any municipal elections this year, we're not putting anything on ballot ourselves, but she could be helpful. But honestly, I think that my concern is about the vitriol of this season and turning people away. And, or, you know, that there could be circumstances that make people feel uncomfortable going to do that civic duty. So both on the technical side, but also on just kind of cultural experience of where we're at politically right now, if you all have any insights for us, even if it's not actions you're going to take on, I would love that from you. And I guess that opens the other door for a question about if there are ideas or desires you all have to engage with the city departments around human rights issues or opportunities that my office can facilitate, and Michelle is a great advocate for you, but I would also love to hear if you have any ideas tonight. We can always get into anything.
I would just maybe to, what you just asked, we've talked a little bit about, ordinances. I would argue that ordinances that I saw when I was on the commission in 2005 are different from here. That were coming through, so we were looking at ordinances as they were being made. But is there a process where ordinances are looked at consistent, you know what I mean, like
New policies,
old policies, and then looking at them sort of through the lens of human rights and otherwise. I think the newer policy, like, is there something that happens systematically?
in short, no. We have a policy, an internal policy review committee that's made up of a bunch of representatives across departments, basically. So no matter what the department, the policy is, that right now they're working on an AI policy. They will, those internal stakeholders will review. But we don't just audit sort of, but you could do that. You would be welcome to say, we want to look at all of these related policies, and our team could pull up those ordinances for you.
Yeah, that's something we've talked about doing. And then the other is just the new ordinances are coming through. I have a lot of confidence in city staff and in your office currently, Mayor, so I'm not too worried. But there was a time when it was concerning, some of the ordinances that were coming through. So we talked about, how do we, where can we sort of come in and just take a look at things as they're going through, knowing that much of what's going through is going to be very interesting to us, and we probably don't want to look at it.
I'll just say off the top of my head, I think planning is probably one of the more active in generating either ordinance changes or wholly new ordinances. Also, community and neighborhoods is the department, and it's within that. Community and neighborhoods is the whole. So like the fleet block development is coming up. Form-based code, which is really different. That's the type of zoning that a lot of cities that are undoing single family form-based code. Those are all within community neighborhoods. And I can imagine you all saying, for the next year, we'd like staff to keep sort of a pulse on any zoning or any ordinance changes or new ordinances that come out of community neighborhoods. So we can just look at the list monthly and say, we want to dig deeper on these two items, let's look at it. And then you could request the city staff before we ever send it to the council, and give you a briefing on what the purpose is and what they're looking at. And I think if we could area like that, rather than every ordinance from all 17 departments,
Right.
that could be a really cool thing to do every year, something different.
Thank you for that perspective. That's
Great.
Do you see with, we've all kind of got our assigned areas now, since we've restructured and each nation has had their own area. Do you think it works, kind of how you laid out to have us, like, what is an appropriate way for us to ask city staffers to kind of do that, right? Like, what kinds of, to provide us essentially, like, if we give them a topic area, like, for example, mine is affordable housing, right? And I would say, let me know in the area that you're looking for affordable housing. That's a lot, right? It's like I guess what would you recommend as far as like honing in on that when there's so much for each choice?
Yeah. And affordable housing is a great subject for that. I could imagine, first of all, I'll say Jill Love, who's our chief administrative officer. We've got a chief of staff and a chief administrative officer. And the CAO oversees the department on a daily basis. So Jill would be a good person to ask that question again. But my immediate reaction is that I think you could ask for a meeting with the director, Lily or Tammy, the new director, and say, maybe more specifically, where are some areas that the city knows that there's opportunities for improvement around affordable housing, but hasn't yet, or is in the process of digging in. Like driving in place, the council approved last year, is a huge piece of work around affordable housing. So that's already, that ship is kind of out of the harbor. Maybe there's ways you want to engage with the implementation of that, but you could ask for a meeting of their ideas of areas you would like to do on. Yeah. That's sort of fun to work on that.
And speaking of that subject, I just want to throw it out to you. Thank you for coming down on Airbnb because my kid just got an apartment that he can afford in Salt Lake City because of it. And he had moved back home to the basement for 3 weeks. And because the city went through the compliance process with this person, we have these citizens.
Oh, well, honestly, it's kind of not, I'm not happy with it yet.
Okay, good.
Because we're not allowed to look on Airbnb. We have to only respond on the So yeah, and that's at the state legislation level, because we can't have a look. Okay. So in the meantime, we rely on things going wrong and neighbors complaining to us, and only then can go in. And the rule is basically, unless you're zoned for a hotel or motel, you cannot rent for less than 30 days. If you're regular family zoning or of any level, you can rent for more than 30 days without getting in trouble. So you could operate an Airbnb that is for long-term rentals in but anyway.
Well, he just signed a 9-month lease.
Great. I'm glad to
I had two things I wanted to, one, I think, it's following up on your question about the voting rights. I don't know if this is something we would want to explore, so I know, like, a couple years ago, the ACLU does sort of monitoring of the polls and has people going out sort of to make sure that people know how to vote and how to cast their ballot and sort of observing if there's any kind of intimidation happening. So I don't know if we would want to, and I volunteered to do that, and it was really interesting. I don't know if we would want to connect with them to see how we might support whatever they're doing to help protect people's right to vote.
We would work with voters as well.
Sorry, I think what voters and
Thank you.
And then one thing I was wondering about in terms of collaborating with the mayor's office is I would love to have more visibility of the Human Rights Commission, so that, especially if we live in a time where people do feel that there's some ways that human rights are under threat, and they are under threat because of things happening at the national level, at the state level. And so I wonder, how, we talk about like Airbnbs, only there comes to a complaint. What is the process by which, how can we make it so that residents of Salt Lake City can feel that they've experienced some sort of human rights violation? Would know that they could come to us and share, and that we're going to work with the government. We are residents just like they are. And that way, again, we can be more aware of the kinds of concerns, because that's our biggest focus this year, is really being aware of the concerns that our community has. And so I would love to know how we can have more visibility from the mayor's office to support that a little bit.
I wonder about the portal on the city's website that could receive then the city attorney pops in the back of my mind, which is not me, I'm not sure if that, like, what are you gonna do? Are you going to be responsible to every one of those complaints? Whose job is it as volunteers? It's not your duty to respond to them. But we could think about, also, and we're going to go out a little and say, maybe the police department would do a way to contact or participate in the hearings commission or make public comment. Maybe that's an easier way for you to field input rather than an online submission portal. And because that's sometimes a go-to place for people, and they don't end up being criminal offenses, but they don't know what to do. They want some response or someone to help account for what happened. So I wonder if you guys could talk with PD about that.
Sure. And I hear what you're saying, Commissioner, and I think there is also just kind of to echo what the mayor is saying. If it is outside, if there is an incident that happens outside of Salt Lake City proper area, is this commission ready to kind of help assist and push through when does that jurisdiction, right? Like there's a lot of nuances and legal pieces that then are connected with, and then they are, maybe that survivor is also sharing out, well, the human rights commissioners told me this, right? And so there are some nuances and pieces that we probably want to unpack and make sure that we are moving forward in a way that feels not that it just can be overwhelming just for one individual and what that looks like. So I want to make sure support looks very reasonable and not like, oh, there are hundreds of incidences
Right,
that
because if
happen.
you open up that channel, then you become the complaints department, and that's not what we are. But I think there's also, I don't know, like you mentioned the city attorney, do people go to the city attorney with these kinds of issues? Like you're saying, maybe there are city offices, city departments, the police department, the attorney's office, that are hearing things from residents, and again, they're not crimes and they're not infractions, but that raise some of the issues that we could be aware of that people are experiencing. Again, we're not gonna process an individual's complaint, but it's more like patterns that people are seeing in the community.
I think if you want to write up what it is that you want to hear, the type of feedback that you want to hear, and get it to Jill, Love, and me, we could bring this up in a cabinet meeting, which is where the directors of each of our departments get together once a month, and ask if they receive, because I got the parks employees, and all sorts of other utility staff. We have so many staff out on the ground in the community. So let's maybe get us a request explicitly, and then I could raise it with department heads and see what their ideas are about handling those. I just don't want to make you responsible for responding to everything.
Maybe, in terms of visibility, Commissioner Silverman, tell me if this is kind of along your lines. If something does happen within the community on, I guess, a local, state, or federal level, as how you, Mayor, sometimes can make statements on things, would the commission be able to work with our comms team, or how can that work for maybe their visibility, like they sign on to a similar statement you have, or maybe just more of that advocacy piece versus getting the complaints? Maybe once we hear something that is a human rights, and it has a human rights implication, then that can be shared. I know clearly you might need to have an emergency meeting and those kinds of things you may have to consider with the timeline, because I believe you all do have to vote on something as a commission in order to get it out, but what can that look like?
I think our city communications position, which is in the community, who's readers? Community engagement team?
It's the IMS.
Civil engagement. Within that is a new city comms team. I think we should talk with them because that's the entity that we're trying to kind of funnel Salt Lake City communications, which are, there's like 47 different handles out there. Everybody. So, my mother has called me 2 times. She called the 3rd time, and didn't answer the phone.
Let me see if I can interrupt the conversation and put a little flesh on the bones of this discussion to get something down in the weeds and very specific. I'm sure you're aware of the Supreme Court's decision in Grants Pass that was announced last week. In light of that decision, what, if anything, is the city planning to do differently than it has been doing to enforce its anti-camping, anti-vagrancy, anti-loitering regulations and ordinances?
Our city attorneys are reviewing it right now, David, and I think perhaps at your next meeting, that would be a good thing to get an update on from them. They've been in the heart of the SCG negotiations, especially in the last 10 days or so. So I haven't seen a response from them yet on that Supreme Court decision, but I think we will in the next week or two.
Yeah, because I think there's a real significant human rights component to whatever the city decides to do.
Yes, there is. Yes, and I'll mention that the new Utah Homelessness Board that was created in this last legislative session that I do serve on, I think is going to be enthusiastic about that Supreme Court decision, and I'm concerned. I'll just leave it at that. Anything else?
I wanted to back to the sports, entertainment, and culture district, whatever it is.
Yeah, 3 and 4.
Oh, good for me. So one of the things that I'm wondering in terms of connecting, I know that the Miller Family Foundation is, and I know these are separate things, but the Miller Family Foundation does a lot of wonderful things in the community. I'm assuming Brian Smith will probably, be in that room at some point as well. I guess, yeah.
So then, I'll be right back.
I wanted to what you were just saying. One of the things that makes me think about is because we took individual complaints when I was on the commission before, and it was not good. And she's back, so I don't know if it's okay. So my question is, can we utilize this opportunity to connect with community in terms of wealth building and some of the other things? I don't know if there's already been discussion, like for example, I don't know if you've heard of the Community Investment Trust. It's pretty new, it's only like 6 years old out of Portland. And the youth, we're going to be doing a building in West Valley using this trust. So basically what it is that if you are below a certain income, you're eligible to invest in a building. And then there's some governance that goes with it. But it's an incredible way for people to build their own personal wealth through philanthropists purchasing the building to begin with, and then anyway. I'm just wondering if there might be a way to utilize this huge investment that's going to be coming, and all of these buildings that are going to be built, and helping the community, low-income community, be able to benefit from it.
Yes, that's totally possible. And we have a community land trust, which we just started 2.5, 3 years ago. But it's not yet to the level of development where it's ready for direct resident investment. The other part that it could be is the perpetual housing fund, which in a nutshell, as a renter, when you move into that building on 50th and First South that the University of Utah is in right now, we're turning it into housing. And as a renter, you basically become an investor in the building that you're living in. And so the revenue that that building nets each year, which in a nonprofit housing model would be required to be clouded to the next development, so that perpetuates nonprofit housing development. In this model, that revenue is redistributed to every renter household as a subsidy check, or whatever they want to do with it. And then, if you live there for 3 or more years, you can build an equity-like nest egg. And if you move out to buy housing, then you can take some cash with you that you basically earned as a renter. So it's not exactly the same, because we're the philanthropists, right, sort of, but, and then there's also in the professional housing fund, 1,000 units of rental, 500 for ownership, and we become your equity fund, basically. So your equity is capped, and our portion of it goes back into the program, and then you can take the rest of the back if you sell. So, but can community neighborhoods, who I was saying you should talk to about the other issues, they're spearheading the professional housing fund. And the community land trust. So you should probably have a meeting with them.
And then I would also just love for Ryan Smith to have opportunities to think about things like this.
So the public benefit account that those ticket fees will pay into will go to affordable housing investments, some of those dollars will. And we don't have to decide right now, it will be a normal Salt Lake City process that you should help influence as a commission on how those dollars are spent. It's just cool that it's in our hands and not theirs.
Because I'm on that Northwest Quadrant Committee with the Utah Animal Court.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Any more questions from Mayor Mendenhall, or anything you want to share with us last sentence?
Thank you for doing this work. And if you want your profile elevated, I want to help you do that. Maybe in our senior staff team, communications,
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think as a commission, we can sort of discuss amongst ourselves, like you said, sort of put something in writing, what that would look like. Because yeah, I definitely don't need that we would be like the complaints department.
It's defining what you want.
Yeah, defining, and having those communications with departments that are carrying concerns, so we are aware of concerns in the city, and then I think some opportunity to sometimes make a public statement. I don't think it would be like every week or, here's what the Human Rights Commission thinks to say, so, but I think for residents to know that they have a voice in us as well.
Well, thank you, Mayor Mendenhall, for joining us.
Oh, thank you for making
Thank you very much for your.
Nice to see you, commissioners online, commissioners in the meeting, good to see you. Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Okay, so we'll go back to the job.
Can I finish my thought before I forget?
Please do, yeah.
So, one of the things I'm wondering is if there would be a value add to us spearheading some surveying in the entire city. Like there are some Gallup poll, Hope is actually there's a lot of science around hope. And there are some measures that you can use to measure hope. And this could be something that we could see if we could, partner with some other organizations to do a survey across the entire city. And then captures the code data too, so we can look at different parts of the city and understand, like, do people feel hopeful? And then do it annually or, every other year or something like that, so that we can measure, so we can see change. And that actually captures, because if you're talking about hope, and maybe there's belonging that's part of it too, then you, it's not focused on a specific topic, right? We can, it crosses all the right. Right.
Well, I think that's a very interesting concept, Jen. How are you going to validate the results of this?
There is a lot of national data that already exists, so we could actually compare it to national data, use the questions that have already been designed scientifically rather than creating our own. We don't want to create our own survey.
You have an example, I can write down, like, where have you seen this?
Yeah, are there some examples we could look at?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll send some, but if you're interested, like, there's a scientist, he's actually a psychologist. His name is Chan Hellman from a higher ed institution in Oklahoma. And he's been studying this for a while now. Chan, C-H-A-N, is his first name, Hellman, Hellman. He's got metrics, so.
How do you think even when you guys were in numerics for auto voting, I had initially thought, I wonder what some of the barriers in some of our minority communities are to that, and then sending a whole kind of initial thought, so I wonder if there's.
Yeah.
And then kind of inform our decisions in that area. Just a thought.
Right, because things like voting, it talks about engagement, it talks about whether you feel like there's a reason to vote, like your voice matters, or that there's any reason because, we know that many of us living in Utah sometimes don't feel that our vote counts, and things like that. And so I think I'd be really interested to see the kind of the questions they asked around how they're defining vote.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And even on the website, like some of the, I just think there's a lot of nuances. Is that everything?
Yeah.
Okay. Just bringing it back to,
I was gonna say we can also just add a note on other issues, so it's Commissioner still learning about it. I just wanted to say maybe we can also reach out to the police departments as they are required to take down hate crimes. And maybe that's an avenue, maybe that's something that you can find that they explore.
Yeah.
See, I use it my.
Okay, so we looked up one. Commissioner Satini, would you like to give an update just on what your priority area and what you've been working on?
Yeah, I can share a little bit. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
I need to get like headphones like David over here, Commissioner. Because it's still kind of echoes.
Actually,
but if you guys
I can
me
hear
clearly. That's
Thea,
fine.
I can hear you. Thea, I can hear you better than anybody else in the room.
Right? I can hear you clearly, and then everybody else echoes. But I feel like you respond a lot more because you have the headphones. That's what I'm missing. All right. So I think what I have covered, and correct me if I'm wrong, is I want to say healthy food equity was what I was supposed to be covering. And in my research of what I was able to find, what city has done, where we're at as far as businesses in the area, and where the gaps are. As far as the city portion of it, of course, and it's on our website. You can look at that. There's different resources such as composting, the work of backyard chickens, beekeeping. There's like a fruit share, Salt Lake City fruit share, and food mapping, which some of that can still be developed. And then the food equity micro grant, which is the program I was part of with I think we were called Resident Food Equity Advisor 3 4. That's what it was. And with that, we were able to roll out with um, families as teachers. There were different projects that I was able to take a look at, um, such as community gardens, producing, of course. We talk a lot about community gardens. However, like how many people really do know about it? I think that's, you know, some of the gap, getting the education out there, offering garden stipends for families to start up gardening programs. There's support for transportation to deliver meals. There was the African diaspora edible plant mosaic living wall that they have with Peace Gardens International Academy. And of course, all of this is all public information. And then the new American Youth Support. I found that to be neat with learning how to raise goats, meat production. And then when we're looking at grocery, like actual uh, places to shop, and of course, a lot of the east side of Salt Lake City, you'll see Sprouts Farmers Market, Smith's Marketplace, Harmon's, Whole Foods. And then when you start heading west, then you kind of start dipping into where Costco, Sam's Club, Walmart, Target, and then even further west, then you're going into our grocery stores such as MPS, Smith's, Rancho Market, Lucky's, Farmers Markets, which we're all, I'm sure, pretty much aware of, that is hosted regularly. And those farmers market options, you can actually find them online again. Um, a lot of, I think, sharing that kind of information with the community is important, because I do feel like there's still gaps within Salt Lake City. And we're in a space of where, of course, we will Google everything, right? And when we're researching, if we just type in healthy place to eat within Salt Lake City, a lot of it you'll find. I mean, it gives you a diverse option, like plant based, depending what you think a healthy is. Poke, there's Vietnamese, Latin, vegetarian, Ethiopian, Middle East. There's those type of options. A lot of, when you start even getting even further south, so South Salt Lake has a lot more options, which I understand does not cover us here in the city. And I think that's important, because this is the day and age, and we want to be planning for the future and how we can improve those spaces. And then even restaurants. When I was looking at that again, I feel like a broken record because I've talked about this several times. If you Google my name, you'll see it all on there. But Rancheritos, okay, D's, Denny's, Taco Bell, Domino's, Little Caesars, famous on the west side. Papa Murphy's, McDonald's, Burger King. But what I did find, which was interesting, is that Subway, Utah has the most locations in Utah, according to 2022 for Subway. And so with that, of course, when we talk about fast food options and when we have a working environment, that's important to be able to have healthy food options for the working class. But Salt Lake City, what are we known for? Funeral potatoes, fry sauce, pastrami burgers, just to kind of give you an idea. And even when you're Googling it and you look up, you see Beehive State favorites, of course, fry sauce, scones, those kind of fun things. I mean, then I was like, okay, well, let's look at the fruits. What are we known for? Peaches, apples, cherries. I was like, okay. I don't know how much all of you guys knew that, but I didn't know. So, especially with the different working boards that I've been in. But I think even talking about what does wellness policies look like in these schools. Anyhow, I can nerd out with all of you forever on the subject, but I'm not going to do that. I only have like 2 minutes. And so that was what I was able to research. I don't know if I answered the questions or hit the objective of what I was actually supposed to be doing, but this was just some of the findings I was able to find. So I don't know if you
Yeah,
have
that's a great report.
questions. Yeah.
That's a great report. I have a question for you. In your research, did you find that the city has any policy or is acting in any supportive way to allow businesses to redistribute surplus foods? And these are foods that are still healthy to eat, but for whatever reason have getting close to their expiration date, or they're it's an alternative way. Does the city have any policies to help support the redistribution of those food items, especially to children over the summer who don't have school lunch programs?
Right. I love how you asked that question. That's a great question because there was some projects that were talking that mentioned food waste. Is there a policy? I wasn't able to find anything, but I would love to follow up and research that and come back to the table with an answer. However, there were options out there in other organizations where they provide a space. I mean, of course, our brown garbage cans that we utilize, compost, those kinds of options are always available. But when you're talking about the surplus foods from restaurants, no, you'll see conversations about grocery stores, yes, but on the restaurant end, I wasn't able to find anything for now. But I would love to actually come back with a more solid answer for all of you.
And Licia, did you get the city contact or have you been working with, I believe it's Maria Suarez for food equity? That might be a good source in terms of what the city is doing. Research is great, but if you want to talk with her and have that conversation, I did list her contact on the contact sheet.
Okay.
Text you.
I think what I got from that, Michelle, is you said, and I have my captions on just because it's so echoey over there. You said that there's a contact for food equity for the city.
Yes, it's on the staff contact sheet. If you did not see that, I can send that to you again.
Okay. Yeah, maybe re-emphasizing that. Yeah.
Okay.
David, just in response there, I don't know about the city having policy, but there is a nonprofit that does food rescue. And
Yes, I did find that.
people, I don't know if like, honestly, that there might be more of like a health department issue, in terms of what food is eligible for rescue restaurants versus grocery stores or whatever. But I know there are certainly at least one food rescue organization. And maybe that would be interesting for us to learn a little bit more about, because I think that is such there's so much food waste and then so much food insecurity.
Mm-hmm. I mean, you're right. There's another nonprofit organization as well called Waste Less Solution. So they're in there as well, but it's a lot of what I'm finding is a lot of folks dealing with like garden waste, and and I feel like the farmers are doing a lot better as far as where all of that is allocating, especially with partnerships with Utah Food Bank and like some of these schools. And I see it in the schools where if there's surplus, they'll allow students to taste those different, maybe newer type vegetables that they've never maybe tasted. But I love how David you mentioned the restaurants because I didn't find anything on that, and we could and just another space of improvement or a gap maybe that we can look into further.
Well, thank you, Licia, for that update. That was great. I guess I may want to do a little update. Jenny, I'm so sorry.
Okay. Okay, wow, that's loud. Can you guys hear me? All right, good. I'll keep talking.
That's why,
Yeah. Well, first of all, the mayor does have an education advisor. Her name is Jennifer Newell. And I actually meet with her pretty regularly. Some of the things that the that the city is working on in terms of education is, there's an MOU between the police department and the Salt Lake School District regarding resource officers in the schools. And there were some, this was a few years back when there was a lot of attention on juvenile justice in the school to prison pipeline. And that MOU has requires a certain amount of training for the resource officers and also administrators, and then together and so on and so forth. So that's a big piece of what the city is focused on in terms of education. They also have a newer kind of initiative called My Brother's Keeper. This was My Brother's Keeper came from an Obama administration, and so it's kind of a collective impact model. They have very specific goals and so on and so forth. And so there is, the city invested and committed dollars to that. So there's actually a human being, his name is Carlos Palestina, who is in charge of My Brother's Keeper. He reports to Angela Romero in the Youth and Family Services, and I'm not sure what they're working on right now, but I know that exists and that there are things happening there. Some of the goals that I think came from that are, around, they give kind of model goals, and the group selected 3 of them to begin with, and I think that they were like second chances for young. Oh, I should say this. My Brother's Keeper focuses on Black and brown young men and boys. And so the goal, some of the goals are, once you find in school, like reading on grade level 3rd grade and graduating from high school and things like that. And I think that we leaned away from, as part of the initial My Brother's Keeper work, so that's why I say me. We leaned away from the school-based ones because schools are working on those and focused on ones that could be different. So that would be like second chances, coming out of the juvenile justice system and how we support. Also, accessing work. So for older ones, then I think, I don't remember the other one. So that is also happening. If you're not aware, Youth City provides after-school care, child summer care to students, and they've got, I don't know how many kids they serve, it's a lot. They have places at Liberty Parks, in the parks, Fairmont, Liberty, actually at the Sorensen Community Center. Anyway, they serve a lot of kids after school. And that is like its own whole department and, that kind of thing. And then the other thing I want to bring up is, that I think is important for the commission to know is the advocacy around high school in Glendale, which I think is something that the city staff, as far as I know, and the mayor is going to support. That there's a missing high school, meaning in 1988, the Salt Lake School District closed South High School, which is where Salt Lake Community College is currently located. And the recommendation had been to close Highland High. It didn't happen, South High closed instead. So since 1988, students from Glendale have been bused to East High School and to Highland High School. And so they're on the buses at least 45 minutes. They at least could probably just give all kinds of personal experiences and perspective on this, but it has been a burden, a huge burden on families in Glendale for, well, since 1988. And there's a lot of political, the school board is saying there's no land to build a high school, they need 25 to 30 acres. And so they're kind of blaming the city for that. I've heard that happen, and also blaming gentrification on the fact that the district is losing students. About 1,000 students a year, and they have been for the last 6 or 7 years. Anyway, so it's a hard political move to build a high school when student population is decreasing, even though the population of where students are located is actually on the west side. So it's actually the east side is losing population more than the west side is. So there's a lot of advocacy on how can we push the district to build a school in Glendale. And that is not done yet. They have done some studies, there's no property. And so the conversation right now is, do we build something smaller, or the rest of us, when it's all said and done, we're trying to hold the district accountable to it, but when it's all said and done, we'll open a track school if the school doesn't get built. Which is not a good solution. It's just not. There should be a comprehensive high school.
If there were a school on the west side of the school, how many students, do you know, how many students would it pull from like Fallbrook and Highland to the east?
Yeah, so I can tell you for sure, east, it would pull 56% of the students. And Highland, it would pull about 11% of the students. So east would, and actually, just so you know, East High School, the district only owns 60% of that property. So they're actually leasing property for the field that exists up there. So all of the, like the parking in the field and all of that stuff that's sort of stretched all over in weird places, the district has to lease all of that property. So really, East High should be one of the closest, but you know what would happen if.
You know what would happen if that.
Yeah. So yeah, it's politically hard. They're not gonna, they don't wanna have a conversation at all about closing another school, especially a high school, and they are going to be bonding this fall to rebuild West and Highland. And so we've got a lot of work to do this year to get them to commit to building a high school.
What's their timeline on that? Just like curious to see if
Hey, Jen.
Let me answer Bill's question real quick and then I'll, so the timeline, they're planning on having a bond vote this fall. And they recently done some studies to find out how much the community will be okay with that. And they had a report at their last board meeting about it, and basically people were, 45% of voters, of likely voters, were supportive of the $720 million bond.
what was the percent?
45% of likely voters were in support of the $720 million bond. A high school costs somewhere around $300 million to build, which is ridiculous, but yeah. And in this case, it actually have to acquire property. So, and I can talk offline more about property in this setting. Okay. What were you gonna say, David?
I was just going to ask a question. If East Side schools are underutilized and West Side schools are over capacity, is there any discussion, and the cities also, the school districts are considering closing and are closing East Side schools. Is there any discussion about busing students from West Side schools to East Side schools to better utilize the capacity that exists in the East Side and avoid closing those schools?
So currently the students are bused from 56% of the kids at East High are bused from Glendale to East High. But what that does, and David, in my own experience being an administrator at Glendale Middle School, I was driving parents to meetings at the school for their kids because they can't get to the school. And as a matter of fact, we just did a walk It was 6.2 miles, and it took 2.5 hours to walk from East High to Glendale Middle School. So what it does is it makes it so that families and kids can't be involved in extracurricular activities. And when we talk about belonging, if you walk into East High, it's segregated inside the school. There's a white floor, there's a brown floor, there's the Pacific Islander hallway, it is a segregated space already, and kids from the west side do not feel like they belong there. And there's data to back that up, ETW.
I didn't know. In the interest of time, I'm just gonna go over mine really briefly. I've got my topic for the housing. I've got a meeting with Heather, who's the director of housing stability on the 11th, so I'll go over that one. But I've been spending most of my time researching other agencies and what they kind of do in kind of through the lens of, I know we talked about last meeting, on finding some sort of like a formal process or like ordinance review. And what I find is a lot of them are, again, like mostly in like advisory role. There hasn't been one that has like an actual formal process for doing that, which I found interesting. And I met with a few of them and had exchanged emails back and forth. And a lot of the experience is kind of similar to us as far as like the commissioners just kind of take it upon themselves to go up and meet with the different city departments or just insert themselves. So I have kind of talked with Michelle a little bit about it, and we are just going to be further into more conversations with like city staff on maybe if we were to do that at Salt Lake, like coming up with kind of our own way of how it would work as a internal way. Also starting to learn the internal operations of all these different cities, even within their like human rights commissions, are so different. So yeah, it's just a quick little update. And then
But I have a quick question.
Yeah.
How many cities did you survey, like how many cities did you find actually have human rights commissions?
oh my gosh, a lot. So yeah, there's quite a few. I've got a list of the ones that I actually went and looked into, but there's quite a few cities. And some, like you said, you brought up earlier with the review and discrimination requests, we have a lot that actually do that, and that's like primary role stuff. Okay. And Sean, you're pretty next to the night. Yes.
Okay. So yes, I want you all to mark your calendars for September 21st for that immigration community forum once Commissioner Silverman decides on a time with the committee. And I did want to emphasize this in case you all didn't know. So it will be in collaboration with the state, county, and the city. So for this one, which I know we had, one of the cons for the homelessness forum was that yes, we're talking in the same silo, Salt Lake City is fairly progressive. What if we look towards outside of the city? This will be our opportunity to gauge, yes, it may not all be Salt Lake City residents, but what we're trying to do here is to have a very informative and productive dialogue around this topic. And as we know, Salt Lake City, although sometimes the community may not live in Salt Lake City, we may serve them through our different services and nonprofits that do operate in Salt Lake City. So this will be an open event. And yeah, that's pretty much what I want to say on that. Send Commissioner Silverman anything you might want to add to that event that she is planning. Human Rights Day will be December 12th. Thank you, Commissioner Terry, for getting us Lions Bank for no cost. They will be one of our in-kind sponsors. We'll have the 18th floor. I'm very appreciative of that help with Commissioner Terry giving us that space. So we should be looking forward to that event. Mayor has committed to be there as well, so this will be her first time in an in-person Human Rights Day. So we'll be very excited. It'll fit just about more or less the same amount as Gallivan. So we will look into how we monitor those RSVPs. I know sometimes people RSVP and then they don't show up, and we definitely want to make it open and public to the community, but clearly as we're growing, we might just have to explore new spaces in the future. Other than that, we will need to be opening applications for the awards this year. I'll just review the application and make sure everything's good to go in terms of what you all adopted last year. So our last meeting will be November 12th, so that will cover the election. So we won't be meeting on the day of the election. So on November 12th, since that will give us a month, we will just have to figure out a process that works best for the commission. I know that with the influx of applications, it's hard, right? It's hard for you all to go make a decision, read through all these applications, and then vote in an hour and a half meeting. So we just need to explore what we want to do in terms of that. And to make sure, I'm sure we'll just get more applications. So I'm hoping that you all can get to consensus on your voting. Not saying one person one way or the other, but how can we get it in? Okay, well, we narrowed it down to 5 people. And out of this 5 people, every commissioner has to vote. And I like to see it that way because it has been scattered in years past, like very scattered.
Can I question, the application, so the last year we were reading, some of them were quite long. I'm wondering if there's something we can do in the application that limits how much people write, just so that we can, so it doesn't take as long for us to get through the applications. Forced concise.
If it's an online form, sometimes those have it where it has a word limit or character limits. If we did like a Google form or something, you can limit how much you can write.
If you have suggestions on what the limit will be, let me know.
I would say 70.
Can you send out the questions one more time?
Yeah, I'll send it for you guys to all review, yes.
Yeah, that would be great, and then maybe we could come up with estimated word limits.
Based on the question.
Based on the questions, obviously, so many questions. Yeah.
I'll send that to you all for.
That would be so great, just for everything more. And I think if people have suggestions on a good way to do the voting, that would be good to think about in advance of November, so that we can have a really good process.
So yeah, I think what we might have to look at is scheduling out 2 hours to really, but everybody has to come prepared with what their decisions are, where they're gonna move or lean towards, because it was very, very scattered, it was very hard. And that's why we have to, if it's a tie, I'm like, okay, well, they both deserve the award. So we are, what the commission has adopted is 2 for every category. I think last year we had to get 3 in 2 of them because of how the votes were very scattered. So think of your ideas for that. We have to get this going so that it can be open longer and get this out to the community as well. The next item I just want to touch base on is a future collaboration opportunity with community partners in NC. That is led up by the United Jewish Federation in partnership with many nonprofits, representatives. Commissioner Lita attends on behalf of the Human Rights Commission. And his willingness to be a part of the community. So they do a film series that is on various communities, and they also have assisted and really pushed the mark forward on the hate crimes initiative you all are discussing. They worked with SLCPD closely in terms of that. They worked with the DA's office as well. And just so you all are aware, we are trying to, in terms of the other commission, the Racial Equity Policing Commission, they are working on ways that SLCPD can track those measures as well. Because I think because it was a new initiative, we got that PSA out, there's pamphlets on them and everything. I think the feedback is, okay, what do these numbers look like across the state as well? Because we do have the Department of Public Safety represented on this community partners as well, and I know they don't really have a survey when someone calls, hey, did you know about this through these different metrics? So we are also trying to measure that side, are these pamphlets and PSAs, are these items are causing, I guess, an influx of calls. We want to see that this is actually received by the community, and this is why hate crime reporting is increasing. If that makes sense. So, Dr. Jacobson did mention that he would love to partner with the Human Rights Commission, and I did share with him this year alone, I don't think you all can sign up for anything else. We have 2 big events. One is our annual event at the Immigration Forum, will be a big event. And we have 6 months left in the year, so looking towards next year, if this is something the commission would like to do, there is that open partnership. And then lastly, the annual end of year report is coming around, so this is where the commission will put in their recommendations for next year. Anything they would want to advise the mayor's office and or city council, that's always there, you advise both mayor and council on any of these topics that you all are working on, any ideas on how the commission could progress and be more visible and present for the administration. So these are the kinds of things you have to start thinking on now, because as we're reflecting on the end of the year, we vote in November, and by September, I will have a draft of the report for you all. So in the next month, as you all are working on your priorities, if you have a recommendation, make sure you are keeping me in the loop of that, and let's work through it, let's talk about it, so that it can be on the draft by our September 3rd meeting. Does that make sense? Okay. And we'll have
Can I make a suggestion?
Go ahead.
Thank you. I suggest that since each commissioner has a certain area of interest and priority, that between now and September, when we meet again, each of us draft a 1-paragraph or 2-paragraph statement about our area of priority or interest, what we think as the commission has been accomplished and what we would hope to accomplish in the future. Just maybe 2 paragraphs, doesn't have to be very long. And then we can give those to Michelle at or before the September meeting. That will help her put together our annual statement to the council. Secondly, with respect to the Human Rights Day event, oh, sorry about the balloons. I can't fix that. I'm sorry. I don't know. Zoom's got something going on here that I can't figure out. It's probably going to do it again if I keep waving long enough. But at any rate, for the Human Rights Day, 2 suggestions. One, we had some really good candidates last year that didn't get selected. I suggest we go back to the sponsors who promoted those candidates and ask if they would like to resubmit the names of those people, if they're still interested, and update their sponsorships so that we have that pool to draw from. And then I think we need to get these applications out right away so people have enough time to think about it, so that hopefully before the November meeting, we have a list of the likely candidates and can at least have a straw vote sometime before the November meeting to decide who we're going to recommend to receive these awards. Those are my suggestions.
That's a great suggestion, David. Just moving through, since we are a little over time, is there anything anybody wants to bring up for our other council business, or should we just skip that one? Okay, I'm with you. Okay, well, could I get a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
I'll second. All in favor of adjourning, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you all.
So, meeting ends Tuesday, July 2nd at 7:09 p.m.